A lot of IT business analysts, or ITBAs as I call them, report difficulty getting the right requirements for business solutions involving software. For the record, that's most often the job of folks with job titles like IT analyst, technical analyst, business analyst, systems analyst, or product owner, product manager, and a lot more. There seems to be just as little clarity in naming the job as there is in figuring out the best way to practice it. Maybe those two things are related. Anyway, I have identified 4 problems that I get asked about the most. I figure that's about all I can cover in a 45-minute presentation anyway. So to deal with those problems, first off, assume that the problems are all in your head. An old friend of mine, Sigmund Freud, discovered the subconscious mind. Now, most of his original theories about what the subconscious does and doesn't do have been debunked in the meantime. But the concept survived. However, current scientific language ditched the name subconscious because it inaccurately implied an inferior consciousness. They now distinguish the conscious or rational mind from the non-conscious or automatic mind. Modern studies indicate that these two parts of your brain are not always synchronized. I'll present my case that the dueling minds are important to folks like us who elicit business needs from other stakeholders. Since requirements define the intersection between people and technology, you need a solid understanding of the technology and the human mind. Now that's a pretty big ask. To practice your business analysis skills, you don't need to be an expert developer. But you do need to understand what current information technology can do for people. You also do not need to be a brain scientist, but a basic understanding of how the conscious and non-conscious minds work is essential to communicating with and comprehending what your stakeholders need and want. After all, they are the real people in the world. As a real simple example, I will reveal why you should probably minimize or avoid the use of the word why in your conversations with stakeholders. I'll show you a better way of getting to the answer than just asking, why do you want that? I also want to explain how understanding the roles of the conscious and non-conscious minds can forever change how you elicit, analyze, and communicate business needs in your organization. Lastly, I'll give you at least a starting point in your journey toward incorporating any ideas you find interesting enough to explore into your daily routine. That's what you're in for today, folks, so buckle in. Here are the big 4 challenges I picked. I probably should have included a drum roll for dramatic effect, because I'm sure these are problems you've never heard of before. Stakeholders don't know what they want. I doubt that any of you ever experienced that one. I know when I ask, every stakeholder knows exactly what he or she wants. All I have to do is ask the right question, and they tell me in no uncertain terms what I should do with my question, where I can go, and how to get there. Based on my years of experience, the solution to that problem is simple. Get better stakeholders. That way, you could solve world hunger. Just get those hungry people to eat more. Subject matter experts, or SMEs, and other stakeholders don't have time for you. Well, that's just plain silly. If they don't know what they want, what good would it do getting more time from them? That's not a real problem, is it? Next on my list is communication challenges. Not sure where that comes from either. I thought we'd solve that one by allowing everyone to speak English. And English is such a simple language, isn't it? It's easy to learn and absolutely no ambiguity or subjectivity. After all, every word means something in English. Seriously, communication is about trying to figure out how to get what's in my head into your head. And that plays directly into the upcoming topic of the conscious and non-conscious mind. And at position 4, I have changing priorities and requirements. I think that has something to do with the passage of time. To solve that problem, just solve time travel. Simple. See, your requirements define a future state. Just jump ahead to when this project is done, ask those future stakeholders what they like about what they have, then jump back and write those requirements down. Of course, you could also just write the requirements down once the solution is in production. That'd work too. Okay, so those are the problems or challenges that we as ITBAs are facing. I have to warn you though that I'm a bit of an outlier. Okay, more than a bit, maybe a megabyte. Throughout my career, I've specialized in looking outside the conventional field of business and systems analysis for ideas on how to solve these issues. Obviously, facilitation, elicitation, analysis, writing requirements, decomposition, and validation techniques aren't complicated enough. I had to find ways to complicate them further. Okay, truth be told, I am constantly trying to find ways to simplify them. So when I started to look at other fields for brilliant ideas that I could steal and adapt to the process of helping other people figure out what they need and want, so brace yourselves, this could become uncomfortable. I'd like to talk about what I stole from neuroscience and why you should care. Turns out, modern technology allows neuroscientists to understand the inner workings of the human brain better than ever before. As a result, they've learned more in the past 20 years than in the previous 20 centuries. And what they discover reveals that we really are of two minds about everything. The real question that we need to understand as the ones identifying business needs is which mind is in charge of making decisions. We all have a conscious mind, as you kind of thought, because it's what you're thinking with. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's what I use when I am aware of thinking. I know when I use it, it's me, and I have some degree of control over it. It keeps me busy. Now, I like to name things, so I call my conscious mind Tom, because it's the part of me that I'm aware of. And, Tom's a lot shorter than conscious mind, and like all lazy Americans, I like names with single syllables. In that vein, I call my non-conscious mind Mutt. Now, that's Tom spelled backwards, because it is the me that I am not aware of. Fun fact, according to Darwin's theory of evolution, it's a function that I share with all vertebrate ancestors. Even dinosaurs had a non-conscious mind. Mutt is my instinctive sensing mind. It never sleeps. It keeps me alive. Mutt takes care of all those minor details like making me breathe, maintaining my blood pressure, controlling my temperature, monitoring my health, and all those pesky little details. In order to take advantage of this phenomena, we need to discuss how these two minds cooperate and who wins when they disagree. Now, Mutt's primary job is to constantly monitor the environment for threats. If it perceives a threat, whether it's real or imagined, Mutt takes charge and shuts Tom down. Mutt only understands the fight or flight options. Tom can override it, but it takes a conscious effort. Now, meanwhile, Mutt is busy prioritizing input, trying to identify the biggest threat. The world is a dangerous place, and threats come from everywhere. Mutt figures out which imminent threats I need to focus on now. If I have high blood pressure and I'm being chased by a lion, high blood pressure isn't going to get Mutt's attention. Mutt wants me to solve that lion problem now and worry about living a long and productive life later if I should survive. Mutt is the absolute master at multitasking because it's dealing with my life. While Tom's off daydreaming about making money or what those cloud formations look like or how to trap a mate. Multitasking is counterproductive for our conscious mind because we can only process a tiny number of conscious thoughts at the same time. Mutt relies entirely on feelings and perceptions. It doesn't try to make sense of the world. If something feels good, it must be right. If I start to feel uncomfortable, that's Mutt at work. It's telling me something's wrong. It doesn't know what's wrong, it's just a feeling. But it alerts me to be more attentive to my environment so I can discover what's making me uncomfortable. Now, because of its limitations, Mutt prefers things that are familiar, where it knows how to recognize a threat, to the unknown, where anything could be a threat. There are risks that it doesn't even know are risks, so Mutt's terribly busy. It would much rather chill and stick to the familiar. Well, guess what? When you're asking stakeholders to define requirements, that's uncharted territory for them. Their non-conscious does not feel comfortable. Mutt is always on autopilot. If it perceives a threat, it instantly reacts and manages my hormone household to give me a shot of adrenaline or whatever the situation calls for. It also craves instant gratification because it's feeling oriented and it's programmed to feel good. The biggest problem from a requirements elicitation perspective is Mott makes most of my decisions. According to neuroscience, Mott makes about 80% of my decisions before Tom is even aware of the need for a decision. Mott decides up to 7/10 of a second before Tom knows what's going on. Once Tom becomes aware of what Mott decided, Tom's only choice is to justify or override whatever Mott decided. It takes more energy to contemplate and choose a different course of action, so the default is to accept Mott's decision. So what does Tom do? Tom's who I think I am. Whenever I think about me, I'm Tom. I've known me since I can think. I even remember me thinking about me. Actually, my rational mind is what makes me human. Tom organizes my thoughts. It understands structures and logic. It lets me consider different options and actions. It thinks ahead. It anticipates and plans future actions. It analyzes situations that are new and different. Most importantly, it learns. It acquires new skills. From an IT business analysis perspective, Tom is responsible for inventing solutions and testing new tools and techniques. It can consciously choose to do something like go to the movies. To enhance that learning process, it has the power to focus on a single topic and follow a logical path. Tom also thinks it is the decision maker. Like I mentioned earlier, in most situations, all it does is accept the decisions that Mott has already made. Tom has difficulty deciding because he's overwhelmed by too much information. And in today's complex world, it's nearly impossible to keep all pertinent information front and center at the same time. For example, an American physicist named Richard Feynman realized that making trivial decisions took too much of his time, so he decided to simplify his life by only eating vanilla ice cream. Whenever he ordered ice cream, it had to be vanilla. Saved him so much time that he became famous and won the Nobel Prize in physics, not in ice cream. To take advantage of this in your IT business analysis and requirements elicitation, you need to understand what languages Tom and Mott understand. Now, my conscious mind understands information. Data is great for analytics or information analysis. Tom understands logic. It can create logical connections to unite disparate thoughts. It listens to evidence and tries to weigh the consequences of actions. Well, since it's my reasoning mind, it obviously understands reasoning. When I asked myself why on earth anyone would choose to become an ITBA, I struggled. After trying all of the simple answers, I recognized that the answer was actually complex based on Dave Snowden's Cynefin framework. That meant I had to find ways of discovering safe-to-fail tests to evaluate any theories I had. And that led me to the epiphany. According to my research, augmented by my infallible intuition, the number one force that drives us to pry requirements out of the minds of others is curiosity. I want to understand how and why people do what they do, what problems they have, and how I can help them. That requires a natural, deep, almost pathological curiosity. That's what pushes you to ask questions to discover what they want or need. Curiosity drives questions. If I want to know something that I don't know, I'm curious. I have to try to figure it out. And figuring it out follows the learning process, also known as the stages of competence. This is where your conscious mind excels. Whenever we are confronted with a new situation, we're in a state called non-conscious incompetence. In layman terms, I don't know what I don't know. I don't even know that there is something to know, let alone what it is. Can I bungee jump? I don't know. I never tried it, and never will, by the way. A question represents something I know that I don't know. If I can formulate a question, that moves me into conscious incompetence. Now I know that I don't know something that I need to know in order to do what I want to do. Can I windsurf? Nope, tried that and it didn't work. Turns out I'm allergic to drowning. That is conclusively conscious incompetence. When I ask the right person that has the knowledge and the authority, I get the right answer. That moves me into conscious competence, meaning I now know that I know something. My source told me how to calculate VAT or how to update a customer account or whatever. If I think about it consciously, I can do it. I could advance to the final stage of competence by repeatedly practicing something until I acquire non-conscious competence. That's where I don't have to think about how to do it, I just do it. Mott has taken over execution at that time, and it becomes second nature for me. Like mishitting a golf ball in the wrong direction. After years of practice, I can do that really well. The good news is that you do not need to achieve that stage to define a future state. Conscious competence is all we need to write a requirement. And that's fortunate because in the non-conscious competence stage, I cannot explain to someone else how I do what I do and why I do it. That's the essence of the term non-conscious. And it's also, by the way, a major cause of communication challenges. Now, curiosity is a personality trait. If you don't have it, well, it's kind of hard to acquire. If you are not naturally curious, well, that implies you're probably satisfied with what you have. Skills are something else. You can learn new skills by going through the 4 stages of competence. What is the most important skill for the person wearing the IT business analysis hat? Listening. Asking questions is critical, but your goal isn't to hear yourself speak, but to listen to what the other person says. Listening is a highly underrated and undervalued skill. ITBAs need to listen and comprehend information from the other person. What's that person saying? What does that person intend to say? Interestingly, the burgeoning field of conversational AI, or artificial intelligence, teaches us a lot about human conversations. What a computer can do well is to listen without interrupting you. What's it listening for? Intents. Conversational AI recognizes intents, that's what you want, and entities, which are things related to what you want. Contexts are topics that the AI understands, and responses, how it can react. Now, those are great concepts for an analyst to consider. You might want to consider taking notes on those 4 when you're chatting with your domain experts. As an ITBA, you want to listen for the intent while you hear the words your SME is saying. That way you'll miss and misunderstand fewer requirements. The art of listening isn't about hearing sounds. It's about interpreting intent out of the sounds. You're listening for requirements, data needs, problems, solutions, constraints, and so on. Now, there are a lot of listening techniques that you can learn. Active listening has been around so long it has a beard. I assume most or all of you practice active listening, consciously or non-consciously. You maintain eye contact, you nod agreement, you paraphrase. You send visual and verbal cues to the other person, signaling that you're paying attention. I recently ran across a term that I think is more descriptive than active listening, engaged listening. That implies you're not just active, you are engaged in the conversation. You're interested, you're involved, you're participating, and the other party knows it. Informational listening is a relatively new concept, and it's not as widespread as engaged listening. It's about listening with intent. It's actually common amongst spies because they're trained to listen to a casual conversation at a table beside them and extrapolate information that has nothing to do with what the people are saying, but what the spy extrapolates as actionable intelligence. IT analysts could learn a lot from James Bond or Jason Bourne. Then there's what I consider to be one of the most powerful listening techniques available to you, one that is highly underused: the power of silence. Silence creates tension. To get user stories, requirements, or whatever from someone, the other person needs time to think. The longer the silence lasts, the greater the tension. It actually creates a void that is literally screaming for somebody to fill it. I once had a manager named Dieter. He was the master of silence. When he interviewed someone, he would ask a question and then not say a word until the other person spoke. Then Dieter would sit, observe, and wait. It sometimes took 20 to 30 seconds before the other person finally broke down and responded. I tried to hold out against Dieter, but the longest I ever made it was 1 minute before I broke the silence and started talking. Silence makes us uncomfortable. When it's our turn to talk, we feel compelled to say something, anything, to relieve the tension. It's a weapon in the hand of a skilled analyst. Use silence effectively, and you'll hear a whole lot more. Your main challenge as the one eliciting requirements is to listen more than you talk. A Greek philosopher named Epictetus observed, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." Sounds like great advice, unless you're the presenter, of course, in which case it's not. Now, Tom can learn and use new techniques, like the sounds of silence. It understands and follows the stages of competence whenever it needs to learn something new. However, it's time now to turn our attention inward to Mott and what language it understands. Consider the whole process of communicating with various stakeholders to reveal a set of requirements in any form. Normal people, unlike us analysts, don't naturally speak in terms of business, stakeholders, solution, and transition requirements. They also don't spout user stories, features, functions, or scenarios. Those constructs are not natural to their way of thinking. However, their non-conscious mind doesn't think. It feels. For instance, it assumes that anything familiar must be true. An American comedian, Stephen Colbert, introduced a concept called truthiness in 2006. I don't know if he invented the word, but he certainly popularized it. Truthiness is gut feel. If something feels right, it must be true, whether it is or not. That is Mott's baseline. Mott also understands associations. This animal tastes good, and that animal looks about the same, so it probably tastes good too. Studies show that we react more positively to people who look like us or resemble people that we like. Mott distrusts or dislikes strangers who resemble people who hurt us in the past. Now, Mott executes actions that are not premeditated. Remember, it doesn't think about things, it does them or it does not do them. And it often acts so fast that Tom can't even control it. Mott understands feelings and sensations. It prefers feeling good, which makes it susceptible to peer pressure. If my friends do something, it must be safe. Mott tells me to do it too. If I do, I'll fit in. Now the problem is that Tom, my conscious mind, is so much slower than Mott that it's not even a contest. Tom can process about 40 pieces of information per second. 40. Mott, on the other hand, processes over 11 million pieces of information per second. Vision alone feeds Mott about 10 million pieces of information per second. Your other 4 senses, taste, touch, smell, and hearing, and monitoring your health to keep you alive altogether, those add up to about another million. While you are looking at this presentation and obviously listening to every single word I have to say, most of your mental capacity is busy interpreting what your eyes see. Why do we care? Because to do our job, we need to understand and communicate with Mott. For starters, Mott is the born skeptic. Turns out that Mott absolutely loves to challenge change. Remember, Mott's primary purpose is to keep me alive, so it will challenge any presented logic and evidence. It's an extremely critical listener and instinctively tries to refute my rationale. If you tell your stakeholders that the solution you're proposing will help them work faster, their non-conscious does not believe you. Mott is not logical. So how can you overcome skepticism?